about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's be free with Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to our latest live stream. I'm joined this evening by Anna. Hi, Anna. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Great stuff. And we're looking at education policies this evening. So, everyone's favourite topic, I always think. I actually do really like it, but I know some people find it a bit dry. We apologise.
I like it too.
Yeah, but it's a good reason to cover it and revise it if people don't always love it. If you're watching us live tonight, please do join in with the activities using the live chat window. And if you find this video useful, helpful, enjoyable, do give us a thumbs up, and that helps other people find these videos. And you can also subscribe to Tutor on YouTube if you don't already, so that you know when the next videos are happening. Okay, so should we get straight on with the first activity? I think we probably should. Okay, here we go. So, I'm going to start with some old school multiple choice questions. So you just have to type in A, B, C or D into the chat window. And just to start with, it's a little bit of politics, I suppose. You know, who was in government when? Because that does help with, you know, when we think about policies and kind of group policies together, knowing broadly who was in government when helps. Incidentally, when I talk about old Labour, I suppose I'm basically talking about any Labour government prior to New Labour, if that helps, prior to Tony Blair. Okay, so who was in government 1979 to 1997? Which party was in power? Lewis has come in nice and quickly with B. Are others agreeing? H has suggested C. I'll let a couple more come through before we do the big reveal. Any more for any more?
Come on, be brave. Give us some answers.
Got a B, we've got a C. Do you agree? Which one do you think it is? Okay, should we have a look? It was, in fact, B, so well done, Lewis. It was Conservatives from 1979 to 1997. Margaret Thatcher for a lot of that. John Major at the end. It's the sort of period we think of, particularly in relation to the new right type ideas and marketisation type policies. All of these little things might be little clues for some of the later activities. I'm dropping little hints there as we go through this one. Okay, I can see why you might have gone for C because of one of those years being significant in relation to New Labour. That might give a later one away. Yes, Liz, marketisation as opposed to Margaretisation.
Although that might be a good way of remembering it.
Yeah. Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, I think that's a nice little trick there. Thanks, Lewis.
So, who was in government between 1997 and 2010? Because I'm really very old, I always forget how young A-level students are, or rather, when they might have started taking an interest in politics. And of course, this is all a lot longer ago than it feels in my mind. So Lewis and H have both come in with D this time, New Labour. Should we see if we're going to have anyone else post in? Do you agree with Lewis and H? Everyone agreeing it's New Labour? Well done, you two. It was indeed New Labour. Tony Blair became Prime Minister in 1997. The last couple of years of that, Gordon Brown was Prime Minister. Quite a lot of different policies in that time. Some continuation of marketisation type policies, but also some of the policies relating more to kind of equality and what we sometimes term compensatory education, policies that relate to that idea. That might come up in a later question, so I'll say no more at this point.
That's the thing, though. I think we think that it looks like we're looking at all these old policies, but so much more happened in terms of education in that period, those two periods, than has done recently, hasn't it? So
yeah,
got a lot more material from back then.
There is more to say, because the question often says contemporary, and I think it's always quite a good question to think, well, when is contemporary?
Yeah.
And obviously for students, contemporary probably feels more recent than it does for us. You do definitely want to include some more recent, more contemporary than policies than some of the ones we talk about from the past. But I think basically when they're saying contemporary, they kind of mean you don't want to just hear about the 1940s and 60s and 70s. So you want to hear stuff that's a bit more recent. Who was in government 2010 to 2015? I think we've already had some answers coming in for that one already. H has said it's the coalition. If anyone wants to type into the chat window what we mean by coalition or which parties formed the coalition, Lewis has also said coalition. Coalition between who? Coalition is a government made up of more than one party. In this case, it was two political parties. Do we know which political parties? In terms of the sorts of policies that happened at that time, for much of the coalition government period, Michael Gove was the education secretary, and so quite a lot of the policies associated with Michael Gove happened in that time. Things like free schools and reforming the curriculum, etc. H has said Labour and the Conservatives. Got 50% there. H definitely involved the Conservatives, but it was a different party. Who was there partner. Yeah, Lewis, well done. It was the Lib Dems. Yeah. So Conservative and Lib Dems formed the coalition. And so there were a few policies in there, including education policies, that were perhaps more Liberal Democrat than they were Conservative. Perhaps something like the pupil premium would be a good example of a policy that had began life as a Liberal Democrat policy rather than a Conservative one. There we go, coalition. Who was in government from 2015 to today? This one should be an easy one because it's basically saying who's in government now. Which party is currently in government? And there's lots in the news at the moment. Not so much about education policy. Justin, well done. Yeah, Conservatives. So B. Yeah, Lewis as well. And H. Yeah, well done. Coming in with the Conservatives. And so since 2015, has there been a lot of education policy? It's not been the priority, I don't think. I think, things like...
Other distractions. Maybe if anyone wants to put in the chat, what do you think those other distractions were? Why do you think we haven't had so many education policies since then?
So there have been some reforms to what Ofsted do. There's some new qualifications come in from the vocational sphere. Some of this stuff will come up in later questions, so we'll revisit it then. But there's not been a big sort of root and branch education reform for quite a long time, actually. Yes, COVID and Brexit. Yeah, people are suggesting these are big things that have affected them. They have, of course. And things to do with the NHS. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, COVID did have some impact on education policy. We might have a question about that later. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Anna for a little timeline activity about these policies, and what we've just done should really help. With this.
Are we giving a time limit for this one? Are we giving a time limit?
We haven't got a clock on it, but we'll play it by ear. But try and do it not too slow.
Okay, so if you want to look at the policies on the right hand side and see if you can remember which year was each one introduced. Some of them might be slightly easier than others. If you want to just post the letter and the number in the chat. There's a couple of more tricky ones here though, I think. Might be slightly harder to identify.
Some of them are a bit longer ago, of course.
Yeah. Although sometimes that makes it easier, I think. Because they might stand out more in people's minds.
Yeah.
See who's going to be brave.
Yeah. You don't have to wait until you've got them all. You don't have to solve the whole wall. You can just, if you know any of them, you can post them up.
Just post them up. The ones that are most obvious that pop into your mind first. See if anyone wants to go with A. Right, what have we got here? We've got B2, F6. A few different suggestions here.
Yeah, I think H has got one of them. I think yes. Oh, H saying no. Sorry, C2. That looks promising. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, in A5, B4, C3. Some of this, a lot of these are right, I have to say.
Yeah.
But one or two not. H has gone for C3. No, yeah, well done, H. Yeah, C2. Education Reform Act was definitely 1988. So when was the Academies Act that included the introduction of free schools? I did give a clue for that earlier, actually, I think.
Yeah, although that one is a little bit more tricky, I think.
Yes, because academies were brought in before that. So there were academy schools before the Academies Act, which does make it slightly trickier.
And it wasn't as significant as well in terms of publicity as maybe some of the other ones too, I think.
No. I think when we talk about free schools, it's worth sort of, H has said 2010 for the Academies Act. That sounds good to me. Yeah, it was a Michael Gove reform. I think sometimes when you see free schools, it's like, oh, well, did people have to pay? Did people have to pay for school before that? It's not.
Yeah,
It wasn't a free education. It was a type of school called free school, which is sort of free from local authority control, essentially. So like academies, but sort of new schools. Um, Lewis has put quite a few in there as well. Shall we have a look? Shall we?
yeah. Let's have a look.
Okay.
So I think the first one, 1944. Yeah, Butler Act tripartite system. So this one's slightly easier because I think most people remember that the tripartite system was one of the older policies. So that's when we had the introduction of the grammar schools, the secondary moderns, and the technical schools as part of the Butler Act. Students had to take their 11 plus exam to determine which one of those schools they would go to.
And obviously, there are still quite a few places in the country where, you know, there still is the 11 plus, aren't there? And still are grammar schools. There are quite a few
Yeah,
education
I went to
authorities where
grammar
that still
school
happens.
actually. Yeah. Yeah, they are quite existing and thriving actually. And then so we've got that, and then 1965 expansion of comprehensive schools. So that came in to solve the problems of the tripartite system, which was that it was more middle class students going to the grammar schools and the working class students not seeming to have as easy access or equal access to them. But it didn't actually solve the problem. So I don't know if anyone wants to pop in the chat if they know what maybe the problem was with comprehensive schools, just while we go on to the next one. And then 1988 Education Reform Act. So this was one of the kind of most key important pieces of legislation, probably the biggest in terms of it includes multiple policies within it. So we've got our formula funding, open enrolment, introduction national curriculum, Ofsted, SATs. Yeah, Ofsted wasn't technically part of the Act, but it was kind of introduced around the same time as part of the same kind of push on marketisation.
Absolutely.
Um,
I'm just going to
and
quickly
then,
answer, well, not really
yeah,
answer, but Sky Limits is just asking about A-level economics. And there are plenty of economics live streams being scheduled, so just have a look on the TutorTU website under live and look for economics. There are loads of them out there. Okay, sorry.
no, it's okay. H and Lewis have answered my question about what
Yes.
might be the problems of the comprehensive schools. So, yeah, inequality, myth of meritocracy. Now, the comprehensives had to introduce something to try to make it easier to teach these mixed ability cohorts that were suddenly in front of them. Can anyone pop in the chat what was introduced to try and teach those mixed ability cohorts? So you're on the right lines, but what is it that led to the inequality and the myth of meritocracy? So just have a little think about that, and I'll come back to the chat in a minute. So in 1988, so then we were into new Labour government then. So we had the introduction of Sure Start. So we're having a bit of a shift here back towards equality and trying to improve the life chances of nursery age children in deprived areas. So we had children's centres and education programmes and preschool activities that were free for people that lived there or were referred there.
H has mentioned league tables. They were brought in 1988, the part of the Education Reform Act. So
Yeah, I missed that one actually, didn't I, in
yeah,
my list of
yeah,
policies?
yeah. But that wasn't the solution to mixed ability schools. If that was
Comprehensive schools.
if that was the reason for that, if that's why you're posting league tables, that wasn't what Anna was looking for. But it's a
Something
good,
beginning with an
interesting
S.
policy.
I'll give you a little clue. Something beginning with an S, guys. See if you can think around that one for the comprehensive schools.
Oh, you think about what happened at your own school. Did everyone get taught all together in all subjects? There's a even bigger clue.
They're still thinking. I'll let them think
yeah,
on that one.
yeah.
So then we're on to 2010. So Academies Act, including the introduction of free schools. So these were the academies that were brought in by the coalition. So these were actually top performing schools that they wanted to encourage to free themselves from local authority control and be able to just have more independence really in terms of things like setting their holidays, how they employed their teachers, their pay scales, things like that. And also that's when they wanted to encourage the really successful academies to maybe take over some other schools and bring them under their wing. So that's when we saw the emergence of the academy chains as well.
Yeah, a really big expansion. I mean, the I think the plan really was at that time for pretty much all schools to end up being academies,
Academies.
and a very large proportion of them are now, of course. But
Yeah. So we've got it now. Setting and streaming. That's right. So setting and streaming was brought in to try to find a way of managing the mixed ability cohorts in the comprehensive schools, but actually, as we know, that kind of ends up mirroring the tripartite system to some extent, with the middle class being more likely to be put in the top sets and the working class more likely to find themselves in the lower sets. If anyone wants to throw in a name of a sociologist in the chat that talks about setting and streaming and social class, then feel free.
excellent. Yeah, just
Um,
on the academies, because of course New Labour brought in academies earlier than that, but that tended to
the
be sort of,
city
yeah,
academies.
was kind of struggling inner city schools, wasn't it? Really, in a way for them getting more funding and things like that. So it was a slightly different focus. Oh, Lewis has come in with Ball for setting and
Yeah,
streaming. Very
well done,
good. Well
Lewis.
done. Excellent, Stephen Ball.
See if anyone's got any others. Rubber band ball. I'm not sure what that means. Um, and then we're right on to 2022 now. So we've brought it more up to date. We've got the T levels. So this is a new vocational qualification, equivalent to 3 A levels. Was originally supposed to replace the BTECs, but at the moment is sitting alongside as an alternative option. And they brought them into kind of similar subject clusters, but broad things like education, health and care, construction. And these are
Business and
mainly
marketing.
delivered by the larger FE colleges, but they are some schools are offering some of them, the ones that don't require specialist equipment, I think.
Yeah, I think one it was as is often the case with new policies in vocational education. It was kind of about trying to have equal sort of parity of
Status,
esteem between A levels
yeah, and T
and
levels,
yeah.
which is I think why
um,
they called them T levels, isn't it? Because they wanted to
yeah,
kind of match it up.
yeah. You'll see different years for some of these sometimes. And 2022 was kind of first assessment of T levels. You'll sometimes see an earlier year for when they were kind of first announced or first introduced. And actually, I suppose that's a good point. Is that the years aren't critical. You don't worry too much if you don't remember exactly what year some of these things
Yeah,
happen. But it is useful to know broadly when they were, because it kind of helps with that context of why a policy was brought in, who brought it in.
I think the problem with T levels is their launch coincided with COVID, so it kind of delayed the rollout of them, didn't it? And not everyone was
Yeah,
able to. And because they also incorporate a significant amount of work experience, COVID put a bit of a barrier in the way to some of them being able to
yes,
set up the work experience part of the
definitely.
course. So that
Chile
complicated.
Chile's mentioned this idea that's been announced very recently about Rishi Sunak wanting everybody to do maths A level, or indeed it's actually gone a bit beyond that now, isn't it? To proposing a sort of baccalaureate type qualification that involves, compulsory English and maths. It's a long way off if it will ever happen. We're talking several years down the line. But yeah, that is if we're looking at contemporary policy announcements, that's one. But in terms of introduction, yeah, you'll all have long finished compulsory education, even a degree education before anything of that starts to actually be implemented. But if any of you become teachers, it might be an issue. you might have to teach it. Okay, so we got that one. Talking of COVID, it's we might get questions about contemporary policy and impacts on policy, and reasonably contemporary still. You all remember it. 2020 and the years following, there were the lockdowns and other impacts of COVID. I mean, if it obviously had an impact on people's exams, probably your exams at GCSE, etc. Potentially. So, can you think of two policies that had an impact on learning during the lockdown and the pandemic? So there's different ways you can think about this. You can think about policies that were brought in specifically to try and deal with that, or that might have had an impact on learning in other ways. Okay, I think you have 30 seconds to try and come up with some ideas. It's nice and recent. You will have gone through this yourself. What changed? What was different? Okay, we'll let a few answers come through. Eston's mentioned social distancing, and yeah, that did have an impact on education, didn't it? So it's not an education policy, but it was a broader social policy that clearly ended up impacting on education. It affected the layouts of classrooms.
Year groups being separated
Absolutely.
and having different lunch times,
break times, all of that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, lanyards, Chile. Was that specifically to do with? That might have been at your school, perhaps. If you want to post in how did COVID impact on lanyards? I'm intrigued. Did you just have to start wearing them, or
you had to wash them and anti-back your lanyard?
Yeah. I'm interested what the lanyard impact is. I think there'll be some other big impacts. People on Pupil Premium given laptops to attend lessons online. Yeah, very good. So there were laptops for learners. There was also help with some tuition, wasn't there? The National Tuition Programme to help with sort of catch up. Removal of school attendance fines. So for a period, of course, people, the policy was very much that you shouldn't come to school if you were ill, and so you couldn't really be fining people for obeying the law and staying off. And of course there were full lockdowns as well, of course, weren't there, where you weren't at school. So Lewis has already talked about people's being given laptops for that. Obviously the lockdowns themselves had an impact in the same way that social distancing did on learning. Reforms to the exams. At the centre assessed grades, teacher assessed grades. We had advanced information one year, didn't we? So there were lots and lots of policy impacts as a result of the pandemic. I mean, just a couple here, a few here. Remote learning as a result of lockdown, free school meals. Oh yeah, during the holidays and things as well, weren't there? There was an issue. Well, just in general. Sorry, not just during the holidays. During the lockdown, there was the issue about people who would normally,
children were delivered food parcels, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then the isolation after testing positive, which absolutely links with the attendance fines, which I can't remember who said that in the chat window. Someone did.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, we can make some nice contemporary specific links here, which is always good. Right. We've got a connection wall. I always love a connection wall.
Me too.
And what we've got to do with this connection wall is to work out 4 groups and what 4 policies come under each of those groups. So you have to try and work out what goes together and what's the connection, essentially, without doing that. Now, what I normally do when I do these is make sure I know what order they come up with, come up in before they come up, and I've forgotten. So, so we might try and solve
Well,
the whole, see if we can solve the whole wall before we start looking.
I think maybe the top left might come up first, the one at the top left corner, and then the ones that go
Oh,
with that one.
formula funding. What
Mm.
might go with formula funding? What does it? What does it particularly link with? Maybe one way to think about this, and I'm not necessarily suggesting that all the groups are relating to that, but one of the things that you're likely to be asked about is the kind of the purpose of education policy. What were they policies for? What was their intended impact? And sometimes what was their actual impact? Um, and so that might be a good place to start thinking. Lewis Mead has suggested GIST-wise and GCSE and coursework could go with gender. Absolutely. So there may
Hmm.
well be a group that relates to impact on gender equality, or perhaps helping, policies focused on girls. See if we can spot any more of those.
So we
But
did mention formula funding earlier
we
when we
did.
went through, didn't we? So can anyone remember what were the other things that we said that go along with that?
So just to sort of very give a simple explanation of it, formula funding was essentially where schools were funded per head of pupil, so that you get more funding by attracting more pupils to come to your school. Um, so Eston said pupil premium. What are you linking pupil premium with?
Hmm.
Obviously, I suppose you could link it with that, because pupil premium is like kind of additional funding on top of the per head pupil. But I guess the kind of purpose behind it, the reason behind it, is slightly different. Well, not slightly different, is different.
Yeah, so if you think about what were they trying to achieve with the formula funding, what was the broader kind of aim, and what else here fits into that aim?
I think I'm going to go back to an earlier point that someone made about Margaretization.
Margaretisation, yeah.
So
Think
Margaretization could
about
be.
Margaret. What was Margaret up to? What was Margaret doing? What was she bringing in? What was she trying to achieve? And what else here might fit in with that, with our Margaretising?
Are any of the others here kind of Marketization type policies? I mean, probably more than four could be considered Marketization policies, but we see if we can identify four that can go together as a group. Perhaps part of the same sort of process. At least one other that we talked about at the similar time when we were talking about these sorts of policies.
And actually, I think there's one in every column, isn't there? Just to make it a bit easier.
Yeah,
Um,
I think there is. What do we reckon? What else might be relating to
let's be
marketising?
brave. Come on, guys.
I'm going to sort of talk through it a little bit. So, if funding per head of pupil is part of marketisation, um, it's kind of the point is, I suppose, that the schools are kind of competing for pupils. Parents are meant to have choice and choose where to send their kids. They need information. They need knowledge to be able to decide which school to send their kids to. There needs to be a sort of clear way of comparing schools so that parents can say that school's more successful than others.
Oh, here we go, Lewis.
Yeah.
Standardised tests, league
Mm-hmm.
tables,
Yeah,
So parentocracy,
parentocracy would be good if it was there, but it's not a policy, is it?
it's not a policy, and cream
Mm,
skimming is not a policy. That would be something that kind of schools employed as a result of the policy.
yeah. So definitely related concepts. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
which is really good.
so
So
standardized tests, league tables, formula funding. We've just got one more
one more in
to
the
add
second
there.
column.
Kind of, it's sort of the goes hand in hand with the formula funding in a way.
And it links to parentocracy. So it was because of this policy that parents really had the power to choose, wasn't it?
Rather than just having to go to your nearest school. The level of choice was actually probably always somewhat exaggerated. You couldn't really choose to go absolutely anywhere, or
No.
because there were limits to, obviously there's a certain number of places in schools really and things, but yeah, it was. Shall we have a look at that one?
Yeah,
That's the
let's
first
have a
one to
look at
come
the
up.
answers.
It
There we
was
go.
open enrollment. So promoting competition, marketisation. Do you know what comes up next? Don't worry if not, we can.
I can tell you.
Should have made a note of this.
I think it's the next one down under formula funding onwards.
Oh right, expansion of academies. Right, so the 2010 expansion of academies. Now we know that something else was introduced at the same time, because when we talked about the Academies Act, we said it also included the introduction of something, which is up there.
Yeah, another type of school.
I'm
Yeah,
kind of
free schools. Well done, Lewis.
Yep, absolutely. So we've got two of them, two more. I suppose we need to try and decide what the link is. So we know those were both Michael Gove policies, coalition type policies.
Oh yeah, we've got pupil premium.
That was brought in by the coalition, even though it was a different sort of a policy, as we mentioned before, Liberal Democrat. So do you
Yeah,
think
so that does. I'm not sure that's part of this connection,
Oh
but that
right,
would
so that
be
yeah.
that would
If
be
if the
the connect.
connection was coalition policies, pupil premium would definitely be there. But are we thinking the connection's something else?
Yeah.
So, what was the purpose then of academies and free schools? What's
What
the
was it
reason for it?
giving? What was it? We can still think about this idea of parentocracy. So, what was being given to parents and students when these were put on the table? And what else might be here that might be giving the same thing to parents and students?
Yeah, so a couple of people in the chat window are still sort of thinking along the lines of coalition policies, and absolutely expanding free school meals happened under coalition government as well. I don't think that's up there,
No.
but
I think they
yeah,
may hold on to those thoughts,
yeah.
maybe, for the next one. Let's keep thinking around this idea of parentocracy. What else
So
comes is part of parentocracy? Being able to do something, beginning with C. Right, there we go. S says parents had a choice to where they want to send their children. Yeah, so let's
okay,
think about this idea of choice. What else might be on this wall that could link to the idea of having choice over where you study? So we've got expansion of academies and we've got free schools. What else could we maybe be choosing from that's on this connection wall?
that arguably gives parents more choice over where to send their kids to school. Done by different governments potentially.
Yeah.
Don't all have to have been
Well, we're thinking about things that you might actually choose to go to that might be on this wall.
And we've already assigned league tables to promoting competition, so we can't use it again. And Ofsted's not up there, so things that are on the wall. Think about more types of school would probably be one way of thinking about this.
Faith schools, yep,
schools,
well done,
yeah.
Lewis. One more thing, one more place here where you might go to study. Yes, we've got this, so universities or college.
Yeah, which was the
University
Technical
technical
College.
colleges, yeah, good.
So we've got promoting choice. Still got 8 policies up there. What could
So
the
I think
grouping be?
so. I think the next one that comes up is the from pupil premium.
Okay, so what's the point of pupil premium? Who's it meant to benefit?
So what else? What else could be similar to pupil premium or having a similar impact that maybe pupil premium has? So what other
So
policies on the wall might have a similar impact to pupil premium? So yes, S says the underclass benefits. So it might be helping people who are on benefits. Which other
or
policies here might help people that are on benefits or lower
on low
income?
low incomes generally.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Lewis has said pupil premium, lockdown laptops, education maintenance
education benefits.
allowance.
That's good.
So we've got 3 out of the 4. Well done. A few of the others theoretically could do. One perhaps was more specifically relating to it, and we did talk about it earlier. But should we have a look?
Yeah, let's have a look.
Should we reveal? Someone. Sorry, I'm going to look. There we go. Tackling economic inequality. So, what do we think links all the ones that are left? Maybe can we explain how it links them, because they're all quite different in a way.
Yeah.
Someone did put 2 of them together earlier, didn't they? When
Did
we
they
first
put?
looked at this wall.
Oh yeah, the coursework and the gist and whys they put together.
Yeah. Can we somehow link the other 2 in there? Lewis is
That would
saying
be
gender.
down.
So gist and whys and GCSEs and coursework could have benefited girls, perhaps particularly, or it suggested that coursework might have benefited girls, and certainly gist and whys did. How might National Literacy Strategy and Reading Champions have helped with gender inequality? I think we're right, aren't we? Should we have a quick look and check that is
Yeah.
tackling gender inequality? If anyone wants to type in the chat window what sort of gender inequality the other policies were focusing on.
Yeah.
It's important actually when you talk about gender in these questions that it's not always necessarily a question about girls. And as we know in education, girls have been outperforming boys for quite a long time. So
Yeah,
boys,
well done,
yeah,
Lewis. Yeah.
yeah,
Boys' literacy, and that's one of the explanations for why boys may underperform, isn't it? Is their literacy levels are not the same.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Okay,
well done.
I'm gonna come back to the studio. We're not really in a studio, but you know what I mean. And I think everyone did very well there. Some really good answers. Well done. Lots of you chipping in, and that was really great to see. If you found the video useful and you haven't already, please do the thumbs up and click the little bell for notifications. Do join us next time when I think might be looking at methods in context.
Methods in context, I think, yeah, is the next one.
So I think we're looking at methods in context next time. So that might be a good one to join in with. And yeah, thanks very much for all your answers. Thank you very much, Anna, for joining us this evening. And we'll see you next time. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye.